Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing how we created this storage unit for our wheelie bins. Wheelie bins aren't the nicest thing to look at, so we wanted to have somewhere to store them that would essentially disguise them. So as with all of our projects, I started by drawing a rough plan of what we wanted it to look like, with some rough measurements. We went off to B&Q to buy the supplies we needed and then set to work. First measuring the two wheelie bins and adding on some additional space to account for a divider between the two bins for stability and also some wiggle space either side. So first of all we had to make the frame using the measurements we took, and as you can see here we used 38mm square timber for this. Ryobi have kindly supplied us with a Mitre Saw, which will definitely come in handy for all our future projects as well, and save Simon all of the manual sawing that he used to do. So here we now have all the pieces cut to make our main frame, and I'll leave our measurements below in the description box for anyone who's interested, but if you are going to attempt making one of these yourself, I would advise you measure your own bins first, as not all wheelie bins are the same size. Next, we fixed the pieces of the frame together, drilling an initial hole first and then screwing 80mm screws to secure into place. This first panel is the top of the bin store, so the next thing we needed to do was to attach the sides. We started by fixing the back right leg in place, and using a spirit level to get that level, we could then measure exactly what our left side needed to be, as our driveway isn't completely flat. So basically we built this to suit this exact position and not a level surface. Once the measurements were taken, we could start to cut the other pieces of wood to finish off the frame and secure this in the same way as we did the top. To keep this structure steady, we then added support pieces to the bottom of each of the sides. These are just made of the same timber that we used for the rest of the frame, and as you can see here, they simply slotted in between the legs on the sides and then we screwed them into place. We did keep them raised slightly off the ground so as not to have so much wood sat directly on the floor. So here is the very simple frame that we built, and as I mentioned earlier, we did want to add a divider between the two bins, which would add some extra stability along with giving us a clear parking space inside the store for each bin to be pushed into. Now for the sides. We had a look online, and whilst we didn't buy or follow any professional plans, we did look at various styles of bin stores to get an idea of how we wanted ours to look. We both liked the more modern slat style stores rather than the featherboard options, so we decided to go for that look. So using some smaller timber, we cut two lengths of this which would sit inside the vertical parts of the frame, and we repeated this for the other side as well. We had a small cut of the timber that we were going to use for the slats, so this was used to determine how deep that these wood battens would need to sit inside the frame so that the slats would be flush. Ryobi have also supplied us with a nail gun, which I must admit was so useful for this project. It made the process so quick and efficient. Next, we had to cut the slats for each side panel. As we hadn't decided on a gap width yet, we just cut a few so that we could play around with them and see what we liked the look of. Any rough edges of the cut slats were given a quick sand, and then we used the nail gun to fix them into place. We used that same small cut of slat wood as a spacer, and this determined our gap between each of the slats. We used 2 nails on each side of each slat going all the way to the top, where we had to make a smaller cut slat due to the measurements. In hindsight, we probably should have started at the top so that the cut was then at the bottom, but this DIY business is all a learning curve, and to be honest, now the store is finished, I can't say I notice it. This was then repeated for the other side panel. So here we had our sides done and then moved on to creating the doors, which we wanted to sit inside the frame. After some measuring, we used the same 39mm square timber to create the framework for each door. We used the same method as we did when building the top of the main part of the frame, using those 80mm screws to secure in place. Again, because we like the slatted look, we had to repeat the process that we used for the side panels for each of the doors, nailing those little battens into place inside the frames first, and then nailing all those slats into place using the same spacer as before. And there we had the finished doors. Moving on to the top. We both agreed that we wanted to be able to access the bins to put something in there without taking them out of the bin store. So, like many bin stores, we needed to add a lid for each bin. Some more measuring ensued, and then we made the framework, again in the same way as we did for the other components. We wanted the lids to match all of the other slatted areas, so we repeated the process of adding those internal battens inside the frame and then nailing those slats into place. Once the lids were built, we used 2 classic door hinges per lid and attached these to the back of the store so that the lids would open at the front of the store. As you would have seen, we didn't add a timber support along the bottom of the front of the store, and this is because we'd have had to have bumped the bins over the top of that when putting them away. But we still wanted something to add extra support along the bottom to keep the frame steady. So we bought 2 metal strip brackets, which Simon hammered at either end into right angles so they could then be screwed into either side. They're thin enough to roll the bins over easily, but they're also strong enough that they do add crucial support to that framework. We use slightly larger classic door hinges than we used on the lids for the doors, as they are heavier because there's more wood, and we used 2 hinges per door. Once the lids and doors were on and we could use them properly, we did notice a slight tilt in the whole frame, so we added some posts to the back of the frame for more support, and that did the job. We chose to leave the back open so that there's more ventilation for the bins, especially in summer when it's really hot. Some of you may have seen on Instagram last year that we made 2 log stores, and this is the stain that I used for those. We had plenty left over, so I used this to save on costs and so that all our stores match. It is 1 coat stain, but I used 2 coats because I was using it on planed wood, which technically you're not meant to use this stain on, as it is specifically designed for rough sawn wood like featherboard fence panels and sheds. That said, it dried perfectly and it came out really well. I just wish that we'd invested in a sprayer because this took me 8 long hours. Finally, we added the finishing touches, handles for both of the lids and the doors, and then these hook and eye latches to keep the doors closed. And here we have the finished product. By no means is it a professional job, but we are both rather proud of it, and we definitely think that it looks miles better than looking at a couple of coloured wheelie bins. Lifting up the lids, we did add in a chain which is attached to both the store lid and also the bin lid itself with some screw hooks, so that when you lift the lid of the store you don't have to touch the bin lid itself because it opens at the same time. Well, there's another DIY project completed, some more lessons learnt, and we both hope that it's inspired you to get stuck into a bit of DIY, whether it's big or small, because if we can do it, you can definitely do it. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time.